What are you eating?
Was just about calories in because I was burning 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. Bananas. I had something like 2,000 bananas throughout the trip.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
What does it take to run for hours or for days to push the human body beyond limits? It's grit, endurance, and an unbreakable mindset. Our next guest knows this better than anyone else that I know. Meet Tim Franklin, an ultra marathon runner, endurance machine, and a living testament to pushing past the impossible. Apart from what you'll hear on this episode, Tim just won bronze in a 260 kilometre, 8 kilometre vert, 6-stage race. What an absolute incredible human. I'm Lucas Meadowcroft, co-founder of Run With, a running marketplace, and a vivid marathon runner myself. On this bonus episode of the Mastering Podcast, thanks to M26 Fit, Tim takes us into the world of extreme running, what fuels him, what breaks him, and why he keeps going when most would quit. Get ready for an adrenaline-packed conversation. This one will leave you inspired.
Today's special guest, we have Tim Franklin, an ultra runner who just finished running around the world. He's only the 8th person ever to do so. More people have walked on the moon than have run around the world. He covered over 26,246 kilometres over 576 days in the second fastest time ever. He also climbed 251,351 metres of elevations. To put that in perspective, listeners, that's 622 consecutive marathons, averaging 46 kilometres a day for 576 days and 460 metres of elevation every day for 9 months. He's covered 19 countries and 5 continents. Welcome to the podcast, mate.
No, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me. That's a good intro. I liked it.
Mate, so the first question I've got is why? What was the reason behind it? What was the objective, and was there a mission behind it?
Yeah, it's probably the question I get asked the most is why I would take on a challenge like this. For me, I just wanted to chase an adventure. That was the reason. Like, it was really intrinsic motivation when I first started. It was a really sort of selfish endeavour. I just wanted to go out. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to go on an adventure. I love running. I wanted to travel. I wanted to have a gap year, if you will. I hadn't had one since, school started all those years ago. So that's how it started. But then the why probably became deeper. As you very well know, I do a lot of work with Inspiring Brighter Futures Foundation, and to inspire brighter futures became sort of a message as well. And I think you can do that through movement and just showing the world how important movement is. So working with that charity closely became really important, raising awareness and as much as money as I could, I suppose, meant that the run was more than just me, which really was fascinating because it opened my eyes up to why it was so important and allowed people to jump on and enjoy the journey with me. But at the core of it, I wanted to push myself as hard as I could, and I wanted to go and see the world and meet as many people and see as many places, I suppose. That's what it all nuts down to.
Sounds like you did exactly that. But yeah, one hell of a challenge. But what about your background? Have you got a running pedigree, or what's your backstory?
Yeah, I mean, I've probably been running properly for 10, 15 years now. I wasn't always healthy and fit. I played all the sports at school, but then through high school, I lost that. I had a few injuries growing up, the growth injuries, I suppose they were. And then I lost my way a little bit with my health and wellness through the later part of high school and then into university. And I didn't start, focusing on fitness again until I was into my early to mid 20s. So that was, 15, 16 years ago. And then I slowly got into triathlon and then fell in love with long distance triathlon, sort of like Ironman distance, and then some ultra triathlons in that 2010, 2015 space. And then from there, I've gone into multi-stage sort of endurance running, and I love it. So,
sorry, just explain that for it. Multi-distance, what's that? So
for the runs I do, they're sort of stage races. So it's like a mini Tour de France, if you will. Like, I'm sure listeners would understand that. So each day is a stage. So it's anywhere from 30 to say 90 kilometres, and you've got to cover that off in that day. And everyone starts together, and then you finish in the camp set up at the end. But throughout it, you have to carry all your own things that you need for the week. So the distances are from anywhere from 250 to like 1,000 kilometres. And you got to carry everything you need for that week. The only thing that usually the race hosts provide are water, which is limited rations, and then a tent. Sometimes they have walls, sometimes they don't, and usually sharing with 6 or 7 strangers who may or may not snore or wee a lot throughout the night. And you've got to carry all your food, all your clothes, all your sleeping kit, everything you need, safety stuff, all in a backpack. So it's for me, it's attritional, and that's probably what I'm the best at and what I love the most, which is really handy.
Is that trail running or is that road running?
Usually trails, yeah. Usually, and when I say trails, it's off-road running. So it's a lot of desert stuff is where they have them, or subtropical climates. But yeah, mostly off the beaten track, a lot of farmland running. Yeah, very little tarmac running on very little concrete, which is cool because it's an escape. You know, you don't take your phone with you, or if you do take your phone, it's not going to work because you're in the middle of nowhere. Yep. So you're just one with the run, with your own mind, and then obviously with the people they're doing it with you.
Yeah. So how did you prepare for this particular challenge? Like 26,000 kilometres, it's very difficult for most people to grasp. So how do you prepare physically and mentally for something like that? And, you know, what did your training program look like leading up to it?
Yes, I suppose, to be honest, you're not really prepared. Yeah, and this is what I talk about. You know, with any big goal, I think a lot of people don't start because they don't ever feel ready. Yeah. You know, and you're never ready, and you're definitely never ready to run 26,232 kilometres plus. So I trained. I was smart about it. I was really conscious of training hard and getting the volume in, but not turning a 600-day run into a 900-day run by training too much. So I was doing 150 to 250 Ks a week, sort of in the lead up, probably in the last few months in the lead up. And it felt, I mean, I'm really lucky that my work was flexible enough for me to allow to get that in. So that's what that looked like. And mentally, I really just switched off from it. I wasn't focused on what it was going to look like. I just wanted to get started. I wanted to do it. I was trying not to put any pressure on records or anything like that. I was switching off, basically. That was in the lead up until like the last week when I was like, it's on now, and I got really, really nervous. But I was more so nervous about how embarrassing is it going to be if I do a day and get injured. But yeah, the training was a couple of gym sessions a week, just focusing on mobility, core, and just core activation. So I was strong through the core of my body, and then as you mentioned in the intro, just running up a lot of hills just to build that strength. It was never about speed. It was just about plodding along and making sure my body could handle the wear and tear of what it was about to do.
Yeah. What about the route? Where did you start? And just talk us through briefly the route that you decided to take.
Yeah, so the rules stayed, amongst other things, is you have to start and finish in the same place. Right. So for me, that was obviously Brisbane. I'm born and bred, pretty well lived my whole life here in Brizzy. So I started at South Bank, and I started with South Bank Park Run only because I love the whole idea of communities getting together and exercise. So I thought that's a really good tie-in. So I started there, and then I got the route. So Tom Dennis is the only other Australian to have completed the endeavour. So I sort of got talking to him, and we've become really good friends since it. And I just looked at his route and didn't follow it exactly, but followed it pretty closely. So I started off here in Brizzy, then I flew to New Zealand. I ran the length of New Zealand, so from Queenstown sort of all the way up to Auckland. And then I flew over to the States, and I ran basically across America in a U-shape, started in San Fran, down to LA, sort of across the bottom into South Carolina on the East Coast, and then up to New York. Then I flew down to South America and ran Santiago, Chile, sort of the same again, a U-shape or a V-shape down south of Santiago, across the Andes into Argentina and up the east coast of Argentina to Buenos Aires. And then I flew to the UK and I ran the length of the Thames. So I ran the length, basically the width of England, and then flew to Portugal, Lisbon in Europe, and went from Lisbon in Portugal all the way across to a place called Constanta in Romania, which is on the Black Sea.
Yep.
And then I flew into Malaysia and went KL down to Singapore. And then to finish, I flew into Perth and I hugged the southern coastline of Australia. So did all of southern WA, across the Nullarbor, into the Eyre Peninsula, down through Melbourne, all across, and then up the East Coast and finish in Brisbane. Yeah, so that is in a nutshell. It sounds really easy when you talk about it in about a minute and a half. Yeah.
No, it doesn't sound easy to me. I could just, like, logistically, how did you cope on that front? Like, did you have a big crew working with you, coaches? Just what was involved on that side?
No, so obviously I was really lucky to have a couple of sponsors who sort of helped out where they could, local companies that I've been working with for a while. That was awesome, but 90% of the trip was self-funded. So I sort of sold everything I owned and really pinched, every penny I could and saved and scrimped where I could and, sacrificed a lot of other things for this endeavour, which I was really happy to do. So that meant that it was a really tight budget. So I had a mate of mine here in Oz looking after as much logistics as he could from afar. And then I had a mate of mine also doing social media to help me out because I've got no expertise in that, couldn't do it, but also no headspace to do it. So that was helping from here. But on the road, it was me and one friend the whole time. So it was different friends. I had 39 different mates come and help me, be my support crew. But at most, I only ever had 2 people with me. But for the majority of it, it was one person. And we would just be doing it on the fly. So we would be booking accommodation that night, like that day for that night, finding food wherever we could. Yeah, it was absolutely chaos, to be honest. And logistically, like the whole thing was so much probably more challenging than what I thought, which I think that worked in my favour because I was naive rolling in. I think if I knew how challenging and how difficult some of the times were, well, maybe I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So I really liked the fact that I was naive going in. And I'm so proud of the team. Like we created this like we not me mentality, which is really easy for me to do, but they all bought into it and they were there for me. And I wasn't the best version of myself, like a lot of the time, because I was tired, cranky, so focused on budgets and things and what's next and who's going where and what's the hire car, who's flying in, all that sort of stuff. It was, logistically really, really challenging, but also equally rewarding when you get to the end and, we didn't have physios on the road, we didn't have massage. I think I had 3 massages the whole time. I saw 1 physio the whole time. There was no bells and whistles. It was
bare bones.
It was bare bones, which I think makes it even more special to have completed it.
What about? I was just thinking about all those different areas in which you're running. Obviously, that south coast along in Australia. Did you have a favourite part of it? Was there elements that you enjoyed more than others?
Yeah, definitely, that wasn't just, I suppose, the environment I was in, but it was also probably my headspace at the time, which I probably look back more fondly on some areas. But I must say, I love running New Zealand. I really enjoyed New Zealand. I've got a lot of friends there. I've raced there a few times in these ultra marathons, so they all came out to support me in any way they could. And then other areas were places that were really different to, say, Brisbane, my home. So I was a homebody growing up, so it's really strange for me to have done something like this. But what I really enjoyed was being in places that were so different and so uncomfortable. Yeah. So like South America, crossing the Andes, just amazing. Like the views from on top of like mountains that are higher than anything here in Australia. And I was just running over the top, and it was like ice-capped mountains, snow everywhere, the bluest of blue lakes, massive waterfalls, loveliest people. Just amazing part of the world. Yeah. And then I'd say the same about like Eastern Europe, because it's just so different. And the stories you hear and the cultural differences that I'm used to, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. But I must say, I enjoyed every country I ran through for different reasons, whether it be the people, the environment, the views. Yeah, I loved it all, to be honest.
What about the toughest parts? Were there some days or were there certain sections? I could imagine that there'd have to have been days where you've gone like, that's it, I'm done, I'm cooked. Somebody stop this pain. What kept you going?
Yeah, great question. I don't know what kept me going. Honestly, I just did it. I just got it. I talk a lot about like building routines when you're motivated, and I guess that's all it became. It was just a routine. We just got up and started, and we just took that first step every day. Yeah. And it was all I said to myself was, I'm going to do the best I can today. Yeah. Like whatever that looked like at the end of the day, all I said was, I'm going to do my best. But there were weeks and weeks of challenging days, all told. Through Europe, it was winter. So I was in minus 15, minus 20, minus 5, like day after day after day. And my right leg wasn't functioning properly. So I was trying to manage through that. It was cold. I was falling behind the record. And I was like, what is the point? Like, egotistically, my Instagram followers weren't going up. Like I thought they deserved to be going up. And that's how mentally fragile you are at times like that. So I was focused on like all the things that were going wrong, I suppose, with how I felt. And I rang mum a few times and was like, I'm coming home. I've had a gutful. Yeah. So I'm not going to lie and say I just whistled Dixie throughout the whole thing. No, there were plenty of times, like hundreds, if not thousands of times where I was like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Yeah. Like when I was stuck in the mire of day-to-day grind. Yeah. But I probably honestly thought I was going to quit. But at the same time, I didn't allow myself to think that I was going to get it done. Yeah. So I just relied on the routine, I relied on my support crew to
day by day.
Day by day. Yep. Yeah. And to know when to push me and to know when to nurture me. And that was one thing that was really good. And it was by pure luck, but because I had so many support crew changes, I had guys that were like really high energy, but they were followed usually by calming influences. So it was never this constant up or never this constant down. It ebbed and flowed, which allowed me to sort of temper how I was, which I think was really, really good in the end. Yeah, but that wasn't by design at the time.
Yeah. So you talked about temperatures. So you're running in minus 15, and then I'd imagine that you're running in some pretty warm temperatures as well. What's more difficult, the warmer temperature or the colder temperature? Do you have a preference?
Yeah, so I ran from as cold as minus 23 to as hot as 66.
66?
Yeah, which was brutal. That was actually in Australia. That was over in Bunbury, south of Perth, in WA. Yeah, that was like 4 days of 45 plus in a row. But what I did realise is that I far enjoy running in the heat, which I never thought I would. I always thought cold would be better for me. You're not burning as much energy, but you just don't warm up, especially at like minus, where I spent a lot of time in like snow and below zero. And you'd stop for a minute and your body would cool right down, and getting going again after doing 20,000 kilometers is brutal. So I did enjoy running in the heat. I ran a lot better. My body warmed up. My body was much more flexible, more mobile, more fluid. Yep. But what it meant was I just had to be really smart about hydration. Yeah. So as long as I was hydrating, cooling my body temp as much as I could, I must say I felt, running in the heat, like you'd be like, oh, it's so hot, but I'd be like, oh, at least my body's awake and alive, yeah.
What are you thinking about? Do you have music going? You're listening to podcasts, what's running through your mind?
Yeah, so I tried to have at least a couple of hours a day where I wasn't listening to anything, just to be present and look around and enjoy it. Yeah. But my mind is one that's probably anxious and overthinking the whole time. Like I'm like, what are we like? Where do I have to stay tonight? How far do I have to run? All that. And then I'd be like, all right, if I run at this speed, I can get to 50 kilometers by this time, which means I've got another hour to go as far as I can. And I was just like, now I can, because I've run that one this fast. So I kept being a human calculator. But when I felt good, I'd listen to a podcast. And when I started to feel a bit like trash, I'd just listen to music to try and stimulate me and build me back up. And that would just alternate throughout the days. But I usually had ears in for sort of 70% of the day. Yeah.
What was your biggest day? How many Ks you do on the longest day?
70 or 69.9. Yeah.
We'll call that 70.
Yeah, we'll round up. Yeah. 70 was my longest day, and that was my first day running in the States.
Yep.
Yeah. So I did a lot of 65s because that's just what I wanted to sit on at the start. So we probably did a couple of 165, but the longest day was 70. And I was really conscious of, I felt really good that day, and I could have kept going, but I didn't want to then, because the challenge is it's not about tomorrow necessarily. It's like about a month's time, 2 months' time. Like, so you couldn't, same with food. I was eating not just for today and tomorrow or even the next day. I had to be fueling for months in advance. And that's really hard to get your head around.
Yeah. What are you eating?
Oh, just anything really. So I tried to avoid like gels and all that sort of stuff simply because I was doing it for so long.
Yes.
So I didn't want to rely on that really, like the glucose, just constant sugar. So I had Tailwind, which is like a powdered nutrition, which worked really well because it meant I was getting calories whilst drinking.
Yes.
And then when I had fuel stops, when I met my crew, when we sort of stopped there, whether it be 10, 20, 8Ks, wherever it was throughout the day, at different times, depending on how I felt, I'd eat whole foods. So I'd have like ham and cheese wraps or ham and cheese rolls or chicken rolls or bananas. I had something like 2,000 bananas throughout the trip. Just I tried to eat whole foods, and then dinner was just about calories in because I was burning probably around 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. So to try and get that in,
it's incredible.
Yeah, it was. When you look at I think how many? I think it was like 3.5 million calories I burnt all up or something. So I at dinner would be like a burger, a pizza, kebab, just high dense calorie stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because last time I was in the States, I wouldn't think you'd have too many problems finding calories in the States with the supersized me on all their meals.
Yeah, well, that's true. That was good. But one thing I did like about the States is although you could get trash pretty easily, you could also get whole foods pretty easily as well. And because it's so big and they're so populous, there's so many options.
Yeah. But what about some of the other countries and some of the more barren areas? I mean, because you would have had to change that nutrition depending on what country you were in. So how did that go for you?
Well, I just ate whatever I could get my hands on, whether it be local fare. One thing we were lucky is a lot of the countries, even the more remote developing countries that we ran through, still had westernized foods available.
There's always a McDonald's.
Yeah, well, there is always a McDonald's, although we didn't see, there's not many McDonald's across Europe. I didn't feel.
Yeah. Not as many as the States. No.
Not as many as the States. I tried not to eat like really high processed stuff like that fast food. Across the States, when I had a couple of bad weeks where I'd just be eating just to make myself feel better. I'd eat that crap sort of food. But across Europe, we would just eat all the local fare. You know, I was as much as it was trying to break a record or trying to be the fastest. It was also a holiday and an adventure. So I wanted to throw myself into a cultural experience. I probably didn't do that as well as I would have hoped, but that's because everything gets on top of you when you're in it. But so I was eating anything I could get my hands on. But there are a lot of times where, say, shops were closed on days and we were like, why are the shops closed today? And it was a local, public holiday, or they don't do Sundays and all this. So there was a lot of that sort of logistics, but my crew were awesome, right? They would just say, we got it sorted. Even if they didn't have it sorted, they'd have it sorted. They'd just say, we got it sorted. And then, I never went without a night's accommodation somewhere. I never didn't have something to eat. So it was amazing actually how it all panned out.
Did you lose any days? Did you have any significant injuries? I imagine you would have had injuries that you'd have to run with, but any significant injuries or sickness? Like you lose any days because you were laid up with gastro or colds, flus or anything? Yeah,
I had one flu the whole time. I got sick, just a cold once, and that was in Melbourne.
Wow.
And that was in Melbourne because it was the first time I'd been around people. That's what I put it down to because I was just so remote and outside all the time. I was never around people, so I only ever got sick when I was coming into Melbourne. That was the first time I'd been around I had big groups of people running with me, shaking hands with people, and so I mean it was awesome, but that's the only time I got like a cold or a flu. I had injuries in Europe. My right leg, I had some nerve damage in my right leg, so I could hardly move. Like I couldn't feel my right leg hitting the ground, so I couldn't get comfortable. Like pain through my hip, and that was just a nerve impingement. So that took about probably 4 weeks. So I lost a few days there, and then at the same time, it was a year in. We celebrated my year of being on the road by not running. We were snowed out. So it was a massive snowstorm that hit Germany. So we were laid up for 3 days, which was good because that was the same 3 days that probably the worst my leg was. So it worked quite well. And then I had 1 or 2 days where I had a big like red meat meal. And then the next day I just felt awful. So I don't know. And that was only in the States actually. I had 2 steaks in the States and couldn't go from there. But apart from that, we had very few days off. My days off were just travel days and then obviously coming home when I had to come home. But yeah, apart from that, it was, again, whether it was luck, design or good management, I like to think it was a bit of all of them, that we had very few lay days.
That's incredible when I think about it, because I had a mate of mine who ran 1 marathon and he said like he couldn't move for 3 days afterwards. So, and then you're doing that day in and day out and just pounding yourself day in and day out. So getting through that for 19 months straight, I'm still getting over that, like an average of 46 Ks a day for that time period, and then not to have any substantial little injuries or little niggles and ankles and ligaments and knees and bits and pieces. That's incredible. So what about recovery? So once you've finished for the day, I imagine by the sound of it, you're not exactly having a support crew with ice baths and massages. And so what did you do for recovery, and how much sleep did you try and get every night?
So recovery was very basic. Like the best part of my day was the shower at the end of every day, because it was 2 things. It just felt amazing. Just a bit like have warm shower, feel clean. And it was the longest time until I had to run again, which made it really enjoyable. And then recovery was, just that shower. And then I'd just sort of sit down or lie down.
Stretch? Did you do any stretch?
I didn't do any stretching really, say after day, 15 really, because it was just taking more energy from me that I don't necessarily think I had to give. So I just stopped. I just tried to recover by resting completely. Some of my crew gave me as best a massage as they could. But yeah, it was just literally finish running and lie down, or sit down, and then we'd eat and then maybe have a drink, and then just go to bed. I fell asleep really easily, just because I think I was knackered every day. So I fell asleep really easily, but I didn't sleep through the night. I didn't have I think I had maybe 15 good night sleeps where I slept through the whole night, and the whole time I'd wake up at midnight, 1, 2, and just lie there for hours.
Why do you think that was? Anxiety?
I think so. I think it was mental over physical, because like you when you were talking about your mate that had done the marathon and was sore and stiff, that's a much higher intensity endeavour. Whereas mine was, I plodded and I did it really sustainably. I knew, and because I've been doing it now so consistently for so long.
Sorry, just on that, what pace did you average on those days when you're punching out,
When I was doing 65, the 65K days, I was sitting around 6:30s.
Okay.
So sort of that, I was trying to do between 8 and 10 Ks an hour.
Yeah.
Probably when I was feeling good, it was, close to 9 to 10. But there was a lot of days where I felt like trash, and I was doing, sort of 8:30 minute kilometres, some days even 9 minutes, and I couldn't get faster than that. But I was still, in my mind, I was still running. People were like walking next to me.
Yeah.
But I was still kept up the running motion, just wasn't quick. But I think I averaged like 7:17 or 7:16 as my pace across the whole thing per kilometre, which I was pretty happy with, to be honest, because there's so much up, and like I walked.
But it's the consistency piece, isn't it? Like, that's at the end of the day. This wasn't the rabbit, this was the hare.
Correct.
So the tortoise, should I say.
Yeah.
So it's being able to turn up every single day. And I think you go out and blow yourself up, and you could probably run a 3-hour marathon if you wanted to. What's your quickest time in a marathon?
3:05. 4. I
There you
think.
go.
Yeah.
So you can do a marathon in that
Yeah.
pace, but here when you're backing up day in and day out and day in and day out. What about from a spiritual context? I know people look at this from a different perspective, but just that I guess real deep inner belief that you've got in yourself that you could do this. How do you see yourself in that spiritual context, or spiritual fitness as I refer to it sometimes?
Yeah, great question. I'm very pragmatic, right? So I don't think I'm a very spiritual person, but maybe I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm self-aware about a lot of things. I just don't know how self-aware I am about spirituality.
Yeah.
I just do because I love. You know what I mean? Like I love it. I love the challenge. I love the endeavor. I love running. I love the freedom of it. So I just did it. But I guess I did learn a lot about me out on the run because I had so much time to myself. And then there were so many challenges and you had to overcome. So I guess there is a deeper sense. But to be honest, there was no transcendent feeling of, there were out-of-body experiences like you got to pull yourself out of this mirror that you're in or that you're stuck and this is how we're going to do it. But whether that was just me being pragmatic and practical as opposed to spiritual, honestly, I'm not sure.
Yep.
I don't know, to be honest. I haven't really, and whether that might change as I look back on it and reflect on it. Yeah. But yeah, I just got into the mental state of just do your best, and then we'll keep rolling forward, keep pushing.
What was the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself? Because you're spending an incredible amount of time with yourself. Obviously, you got your support crew there, but you're the one pounding that pavement. Even if you've got the earphones in and you're listening to something, you're spending a lot of time with yourself. What did you learn about yourself?
Well, a couple of things. One is that I'm resilient.
Yes.
You know, far more resilient than what I thought I was, and that no matter how shit it was at times, I just kept moving forward. Like when a lot was thrown at me throughout the run, like in the run, but also personally, that I just kept turning up, kept showing up, kept pushing, and that I think now I can look at any problem or issue and overcome it. One way or another, I'll get there in the end. And then I also learned I'm historically not very patient, probably still coming back to normal life, whatever that is, that I'm not the most patient person, but on the run I learned how important being patient is and how important being kind to yourself and others is as well, because if you're impatient and you push too hard, you'll break not only you, but more importantly, those around you that you're relying on to be your support network. Yeah. So they're probably the two biggest things that I learned. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the word patience, because that's something that I am still struggling with, and I think I get things sent into my life because I haven't learnt that one yet. Now, fear. I know that is the thing that prevents the average person from even starting any sort of goal whatsoever, because they think, I'm no chance of this. I'm not even going to start. Did you, what thoughts were running through your mind when you went to take on this challenge? Were you getting those doubts and those fears on, shit, am I going to be able to do this? And how did you move on from that and still take on the challenge?
Yeah, I don't think I ever feared not doing it. But that's not to say I'm bulletproof, right? I'm as vulnerable as anyone that you'll ever meet, and I do get emotional, and what I did think was, who cares if I don't finish it?
So you're doing it for you.
I was doing it. There was an intrinsic motivation to go on an adventure, and to go as quickly as I could was just for me. And I think the fear factor comes from ego, not ego in a bad way, but I think people worry too much about what other people think about them, and that's what holds them back. Where I was like, I don't care. If I've got the courage, I think it's more important and more powerful to have the courage to start.
Yeah, agree.
Than it is to maybe not finish. Yeah. Because you can always learn from not finishing something. Like I could have learned I wasn't quite prepared and that's why I got injured, or this happened or that happened, or it was outside of my control as to the reason why.
I had a crack.
But I had a crack. Yeah. I don't know whether that's nature or nurture, But I just say, I'm going to do this, and then I do it. Now, whether I do it as successfully as possible or I may fail in the eyes of I don't achieve the ultimate goal, but I've learned something along the way, even if I don't achieve that ultimate goal. So it's no such thing as failure. Yeah. And whilst I like to be liked and want to be, loved by people, like no doubt there's that level of ego, I don't care what people think about me and my endeavours because I'm not doing it for them. Yeah. I'm doing it intrinsically for me, but then also probably for those really close to me, and they're never going to judge me. My inner circle is never going to judge me for doing stuff. And in fact, the people I spoke to about this run, I told them what I was going to do, and all of them, bar say 2, were like, this is awesome, how can I help? Yeah. And the 2 that were doubtful were doubtful because one's a cardiologist, so he was worried about my heart, and the other one was just worried about me generally physically. Yeah. And that was their concern. They didn't not want me to do it. They were just worried what would happen if I did do it. And that was awesome. So it was everyone trying to build me up to get to the end and support me how they could. So yeah, I did never fear not finishing. Never even cross my mind. It didn't really cross my mind that I wasn't going to finish, but I also never let myself think I was going to finish. Yeah. So that kept pushing me as well. Yeah. But it was never once a fear of failure because I have tried my best to not let ego get in the way of decisions I make in life, but also it's always a learning, no matter what happens.
So your father, he passed during it. How tough was that to you? And did you manage to be able to try and turn that around into some motivation and into a positive?
Yeah, definitely challenging. So we were, 150 days in, I think, when they told me. So they found out not long after I had left that he had previously had cancer, so that melanoma, and that had come back. Yep. And it had come back with a vengeance. So it was terminal. So I think they found out 2 weeks after I started. I think they found out roughly on the same day one of my very good mates and mentors tragically took his own life. So that happened, and then I got the news about my dad in the space of not too long, which are 2 life-defining instances, and they just happened to be whilst I was undertaking the greatest physical endeavour I've ever done and probably will ever do. So it was a lot going on. But my parents have given me every opportunity. My dad, like a lot of kids, which I'm really lucky, is like my hero, right? And they're immortal, right? They're not. They're never going to. They live forever, don't they? They're bulletproof. So that was hard to take. But I didn't let it stop me, and they didn't let it stop me. Yeah. So they were very, you never know with these things like that. I think they'd given him 6 months, but they're like, you hear stories all the time about people living for 2-3 years. I'm going to be at the finish line. I'm going to see you finish. Anyway, well, that didn't happen. No. So it within 3 months, I think, of them telling me, he's got 2 weeks to live. If you want to come and say goodbye, come now. And we'd spoken about that throughout the journey and lead up to the journey because they're not getting any younger, and we've got family that aren't getting any younger. So what happens if there's a tragedy or some loss? And the whole premise and the talk was just keep going. Yeah. Don't stop. And that's really easy to say.
Very easy.
Very easy. Just words are just easily. But when push came to shove, I was like, this bloke has given me every opportunity I've had in life. Of course I'm going to go home. So I went home from the other side of the States. I was on the east coast of the States. So it was like a 27-hour flight home to say goodbye. And I was umming and ahhing whether it was the right thing to do. And then it was wheels down. The plane landed in Brisbane. I just knew that's exactly where I needed to be. And our family, like our immediate family, are close, but we don't spend a lot of time together, but we're close, and we're all together under a roof for that 5 or 6 days before he passed away. And it was magical time. And the last words he said to me before he passed away was, you go and finish that damn run. Yeah. So it was emotional. It was at the time I didn't really feel it.
Goosebumps.
At the time I didn't necessarily feel the drain of the emotion. Physically I was ruined because I'd been running so much and then traveling. My body just contracted. All the muscles just thought, is this it? Are we done? Yeah. And a lot of people post me finishing have come up and said, I didn't think you were
Going
to go again. But I went again, and I don't know whether it was a motivation because of that, or I just was like so stubborn that I'm not letting this beat me.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep pushing. I never even when I came home, I never thought for one moment that I wasn't going to go back and keep going. I mean, I booked a return flight because I was always going to go back because that's what he would have wanted as well.
Yeah.
There's no way he would have accepted it, me not finishing because of that. So I went back and I was dog tired, and the run never felt the same. After that, physically, I was
losing momentum.
Yeah, I just lost all the momentum. World record was gone. Well, not gone, but really incredibly difficult to try and get back.
So how many days did you lose?
I only lost probably 13 days, but when you add that up, that's like 1,000 kilometres.
Yeah.
And trying to claw back 1,000 kilometres when you're already doing 65 a day just meant I was going to have to be doing near 80s a day just to get that time back. And I was like, that's going to break me. So, and I could not get back. So I lost 12 full days and then a few days when I got back.
You got jet lag.
I didn't know whether I was coming or going. I didn't know whether I was Arthur or Martha. It was really challenging starting again. And I was flat. I knew that much. Physically, mentally, emotionally, I was flat. But Damo, my crew mate, unfortunately his father passed away in similar circumstances a few years earlier. So he was really good. He was probably the perfect guy there to empathise with my situation, never pushed me, just said, let's do what we can do. And then we had a bit of fun. We got to New York and he went to I got crook that day. So just a few gut issues. So he went to the baseball and I just slept, and we had some fun in New York. So that was quite cool. But then I just rolled back into it, got to the UK and Europe and just clicked back into gear and said, right, let's go. I just treated it like became a job, right? It just became work, like get up. It was a grind, and I just found the joy in the grind.
Yeah. Has your perspective on success changed after you've finished this run now? What's it look like for you today?
That's a great question. Definitely. I also don't pin as much value to it that maybe I used to. What does success look like? Well, success for me when I started the run was to be the fastest. Yeah. And anything less than that would have been okay, but would have been success. But when I was in it, I'm like, holy moly, finishing this thing in any way, shape or form is a success. But then I look back and go, starting it was a success. Like spending on the road, seeing the places I saw, that's success. Yeah. Throwing yourself into an endeavour is a success. Having the courage to start a success. The people I met, I've made friends for life now. My crew, who I was mates with, I'm now even tighter mates with a lot of them. I'm in debt to them forever. Like I'll never be able to repay what they gave me. A lot of the times their own, their own money, like that. All that is what my connection with people now and places, and I want to do things, not have things. Yeah, that's success to me now. I still want to be the best version of me, and I want to go and enter races and try and A, win them, or B, get a PB.
Successful,
and be successful as society sees success.
Yes.
But a lot of it is intrinsic success as well, and not material. I don't want for things, I want to do things.
Yeah. So you've inspired, I think, a heap of people to go and pursue their dreams. What's a piece of advice that you could give someone who feels a bit stuck and thinks maybe it's too late? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever too late. I think that's one thing, I think the world's allowed us to do is we're medical science. It's never too late. Technology, it's never too late. My greatest tip is, if you're going to do it, commit to starting and then start. And then whatever happens after that, be the hardest worker in the room.
Yes.
At that endeavour. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the most talented.
Work hard.
But if you work hard and as hard as you can sustainably to develop, maintain your relationships, maintain your mental and physical health, just go for it. Yeah. And go for it for as long as humanly possible until your batteries run out. But just start.
Yep.
That's the number one reason why people don't achieve their goals is they don't start.
Yeah. I love what you said about that consistency, because it's that turning up. It's day in and day out and day in and day out. But like you said, you've got to take that first step. What's the future look like for you? What's next? What are you up to?
Yeah, so at the moment, one point I'll say is, and it's cliche, but I love it, is consistency beats intensity.
Yep.
Like a lot of people go all in and then will disappear, right? Because they'll burn out, or it's unsustainable, or there's no strategic plan. Yeah. Whereas if you just do little bits a lot, it grows really quickly over time. So consistency over intensity. What's next for me? I got this whole big goal of getting the entire world moving. Yep. We got the Olympics here in 2032 in Brisbane, my hometown. So I want to be a part of that. I don't know what that looks like. I need to be talking to people to make that happen. But I now do a lot of, getting into keynote speaking, and I've got a goal setting program called Own Your Own Show. Yep. So I want to roll that out to as many years as I possibly can. Yep. I've done some work with a bloke called Tommy Herschel, who has a program called Find Your Feet, and he said to me, impact over income. Yep. And that's what I want to do. I want to leave a legacy. It sounds egotistical and narcissistic, but I want to leave the world a better place than when I got here. Now, I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try and do my best to do it. I'm still on a journey. I'm still, in some ways selfish and focused on me, but I want to be of service to others, I suppose. So so rolling out this goal setting program, talking and working with as many people, whether they be kids in schools or corporates, conferences, conventions, whatever, here in Australia, globally, just doing as much as I can. That's the ultimate next goal. Yeah. And obviously I've got physical goals as well.
Yeah, mate, I love it, and I completely agree, mate. That's where the name stands for. M26 is just move for 26 minutes. So that's what we're trying to teach as well. So, quick fire questions. You ready?
Let's go. I'll try and answer quickly.
What did you miss the most?
Friends and family. Yep.
What country had the most supportive people?
One thing I found is that the countries with the least wanted to give the most. So the developing nations, your South America, your Eastern Europes, they had the least and they were willing to give me the most.
Who do you look up to and admire?
A few people, but obviously my parents, first and foremost, very cliche, but they've given me everything. They've worked their asses off for me and my siblings. And then a gentleman by the name of Mark Turner changed my life. Yep. Took me under his wing into this fitness space. I took the squad over, took Tri Nation over from him, and he's the gentleman that unfortunately took his own life on the run. So they're two of the biggest influences in my life.
What's the weirdest food you ate during your run?
One thing I had a lot of local fare. That wasn't as weird as the wrap I made myself, which was a wholemeal wrap with peanut butter, cheese, Nutella, mayonnaise and a banana on it. That was probably the weirdest thing I had. I was craving everything, and I think I washed it down with a Coke and iced coffee.
What was the highest altitude that you reached?
That was going across. Actually, it wasn't going across the Andes. It was in the States. It was a ski village. I cannot remember the name, but it was 7,000 feet, which was 2,400 meters above sea level.
Amazing. If you could redo your journey, what's one thing you'd do differently?
I would be much less focused on my watch and more focused on what was happening around me and enjoy the experience a little bit more.
Yeah. Your favourite running shoes?
I'm a Hoka Clifton wearer from a long time ago.
What's your guilty pleasure after enduring those months of extreme fitness?
Well, I have indulged in a couple of pale ales since being home, but my guilty pleasure is a Kit Kat chunky.
Yep. Favourite motivational quote?
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Do you prefer running solo or running with others?
With others.
What's one piece of advice you completely disagree with when it comes to endurance and fitness?
Things have to be hard and push past hard. It should be sustainable, challenging, fun and sustainable. Another
world city that you could live in?
New York.
What's one historical or living figure that you'd love to run alongside?
That's a great one. Shane Warne.
David Goggins. Do you believe modern society has become too soft when it comes to endurance and perseverance?
Great question. Yes, I do think they have, and I think it's not their fault. I think it's society's fault. I think young people have grown up being somewhat mollycoddled, and life's been a little bit too easy. That's only coming from a developed nation perspective here in Brisbane, but yes, I think the ability to endure is diminished.
Agreed. What's the most overrated part of being an endurance athlete?
Bank account.
Is there ever such a thing as being too ambitious, or should we always aim for the impossible?
I don't think you can ever be too ambitious as long as it's sustainable and you're not chasing something to make other people, I don't know, let you fit in. I think as long as it's intrinsic, then play on.
The best advice that you can give us?
Enjoy it. Do something that puts a smile on your face.
All right, final question. Finish this sentence. I believe
that if we all move, we're better people. Better people make better communities make a better place to live, and leave the world a better place than when we first got here.
What a great finish, mate. Thank you so much for your time. You're an absolute inspiration, and wish you every success in your future endeavours, mate. Thank you.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks, mate.
Remember, real growth happens one step at a time, and consistently working both on your mind and your body for 26 minutes every day will change your life. Hit subscribe to keep the inspiration going, and don't forget to share this episode with somebody who needs that extra boost. Until next time, stay connected, stay active.